Today's novel idea is Occasionally He Said Something Relevant, courtesy of the sarcastic muse link in the underbar. They singled me out for my classmates when I was only 9. I don't know what it was that caught their attention. Maybe they knew I loved words, or maybe they just liked that they could read my handwriting. Whatever it was that caused it, I wasn't sure whether to be grateful or upset. Every day after school, when the other kids ran off to play, I was taken to the large house at the top of the hill. A kind-faced old woman fed me apples or carrot sticks, or on Fridays, cookies. Then I was sent into the giant library. Once there, I would sit at a desk with mounds of paper and a box full of pens. A wizened old man sat in an armchair and read to me. My job was to write down every word he spoke in neat, clean handwriting. It wasn't easy. I would fall behind and the man would tsk in disappointment. I worked harder to keep up and my handwriting became sloppy. The man lectured me on the uselessness of pages he couldn't read. I didn't understand. What was the usefulness of me writing down words he already had in his books? Once I'd even caught a servant burning the pages I'd taken such pains to write. When I did poorly, my mother always knew. She would scold me worse than the old man and tell me I had to work harder. This was a great honor, she said. I didn't know they gave her money to let me go and write, but I did notice she didn't spend as much time at work. The years passed. By the time I was 14, I could write every word the man read without mistake. But he upped the challenge again. He started to read faster, slurring his words. Sometimes he would read so softly I couldn't hear him. He switched books mid-sentence and occasionally threw in nonsense words that I couldn't fathom how to spell. He's crazy, I told my mother one night as she flipped through a catalog. What he wants me to do is impossible. My mother looked up. What do you think of maroon drapes in the drawing room? She had recently stopped going to work altogether and spent her time making improvements to the house, so I would get no help from her. The old man gave me such scornful looks whenever I fell behind or misspelled something that soon my desire to quit became replaced by a need to prove I could do this. I focused even harder, my hands speeding across the page and leaving behind flawless calligraphy. In a few years, I could record the man's quietest ramblings verbatim. When I was 16, I was taken out of school. I've never had many friends, and it seemed the old man intended to keep paying me to record what he read to me, so this was no great loss. Still, I was sorry to no longer be receiving an education. When I expressed this concern to the woman in charge of my meals, she encouraged me to ask the old man if I could borrow his books. He was surprisingly amenable to the idea, and even helped me pick some out. Soon I was reading historical records and scientific studies that were far more advanced and detailed than anything I'd been taught in school. This was a much greater payment than the money that went to my mother and I never saw. The old man made good use of the extra time my dropping out of school afforded us. He gave me binders and binders full of handwritten pages and instructed me to read them for 4 hours every day. They seemed to be the ramblings of a madman. There were comments on the weather, lengthy treatises on people I had never heard of, and others on people I've found in my history books. There were knock-knock jokes, though sometimes the joke and its punchline were several pages apart, and often the punchline came first. There were fairy tales whose endings didn't match their beginnings, and others that had no beginnings at all. There were pages and pages of numbers, all spelled out instead of written as digits. And all of it was highlighted, or underlined, or commented on in the margins. There were symbols connecting like ideas and indexes to make it all easier to find. It was the most carefully annotated text I'd ever seen. Learn the symbols, the old man instructed me. Learn what's important, and the color code of the highlights. Why? It had been a long time since I'd asked that question. You will see, when it's time. And so I read and studied, taking note of each symbol and how often it repeated. I noticed a swirly mark next to anything that might be considered funny, and labeled it as joke. When the old man saw, he corrected me. No, that one means laughter. Whose laughter? He didn't answer. Soon after that, I found several pages with only some random sentence fragments, each punctuated by the laughter symbol, as though whomever was speaking found the subject too funny to get through. The bits of sentences formed a manual on potato farming. Another symbol I soon came to recognize as weeping. Sometimes I would weep too when I saw it. It would be found near reports on infant deaths, descriptions of mental illnesses, and poems about loss. Sometimes, however, I would find it in unexpected places. Once the weeping symbol had punctuated a 3-page long list of colors, including tangerine, tiger, apricot, and carrot orange, and azure, sapphire, navy, and midnight blue. I couldn't figure for the life of me who would write such a thing, much less fill enough pages to fill enough binders to fill an entire bookshelf with it, and I couldn't understand why the old man wanted me to study it. But in the afternoons, the old man would read to me, and I would write down what he said, and I remembered that this had never made sense. As the year went on, reading became more difficult, and I began to suffer from headaches. My mother would hear no complaints, so I told the kind-faced woman, and she told the old man. For my 17th birthday, I got glasses. I began to wonder about the one who spoke the words that were recorded in the binders. The handwriting changed between books, but the voice never did. I knew it was the same person, and I wanted to know why he said all these things. I also began to realize that pages were missing from the text. The speaker and the symbols alike would refer to something that had been said before, but I wouldn't be able to find it. I asked the old man about it. "You have the pages that you need," was his only response. "Why do I need them?" "You'll find out when it's time." Out of all the markings in the book, one was impossible for me to crack. It would be by strings of numbers, strange names, and things spoken in the future tense. It appeared rarely, but every time it did, I would pore over the page, trying to decipher its meaning. At last I asked the old man for help, afraid he would be disappointed in me for not being able to figure it out myself. But he smiled when I posed the question. "That is the most important symbol of all," he said. "For you see, sometimes he says something relevant." Thanks for watching, and happy writing!